Alone and alone, he watched his brother awaken from the heavens. He was present at that moment and witnessed Veldanava's transformation with his own eyes. Touched by this despair, Velzard gave up on everything and tried to place her hopes in the new world, but maybe we can actually stop him. That's what he thought after seeing Rimuru's power. He couldn't defy his brother, and whatever he did was useless. The fixed idea he had was shattered and disappeared. It was a thought he had never even imagined before, but he came to the realization that maybe he could defeat his brother. The despair that Velzard had been holding in broke into pieces more easily than glass. Although I had summoned the Destruction Death World Dragon Ryu Ivarage into this world, it seemed like something could still be done. If Guy and I cooperated now, there would be no enemies in this world. Not to mention Rimuru is there too. It's still too early to give up on the world. That's what Velzard naturally thought. Guy's expression as he watched over Velzard showed some impatience. Although it was something he had suggested himself, he was somewhat worried about whether it was a good idea to let Rimuru use Velzard's ability modification. Alteration. He was certain that Rimuru would be able to do it. The basis for this is the existence of strong people living in the demon country. For Guy, it only took a blink of an eye, but he had grown enough to notice it. No, that's evolution. As a living being, it had made a great leap into another dimension of existence. And even the dragon species were no exception. Veldora had followed Rimuru's words. Even the solitary Velgrind had undergone a major change in her state of being. I don't know what happened, but Veldora and Velgrind's powers had been refined to the finest standards. The only possible cause of this was Rimuru's presence. And now, this was being proven right before my eyes. Velzard was changing rapidly. Not the appearance, but the inner self. I mean, what is this? This isn't just about modifying abilities. Guy was shocked. To begin with, tinkering with abilities and skills is extremely difficult, and it was a feat that only Guy could accomplish. A long, long time ago, when I fought Veldanava, Guy witnessed that power. Unlike magic, this technique to manipulate the laws of the world was extremely simplified. And yet, the effect was enormous. Guy could also manipulate magic and rewrite the laws. However, rewriting with skills had an effect on a different level than magic. In the case of magic, the most that can be done is to create one phenomenon. By combining multiple phenomena, complex effects can be achieved. Even someone like Guy, who could manipulate magic at will, had to follow these procedures. However, there is a problem. The skill, Veldanava's authority, made it possible to rewrite multiple such events at the same time. If he had set it up like that from the beginning, he could exert an effect that was greater than magic without even thinking about it. That's why the mechanism was so difficult to understand. It was only because of Guy that he was able to understand and recreate this. The first thing he obtained was the unique skill pride. It was not an authority that was passed down to him by Veldanava, but one that he had created himself. The reason he was able to do such an imitation was because Guy possessed an extraordinary level of calculation ability. Even so, he could only imitate what he had seen once. Guy's training level has improved to the point where he can understand any authority at a glance. Through his battle with Velzard, he has become more familiar with the authority and has succeeded in evolving it into the ultimate ability. Ultimate skill, prideful King Lucifer. However, that was the limit. Imitating, reproducing, that was all Guy was allowed to do. However, with Guy's combat sense, that alone would be enough to make him the strongest. It would have been impossible for anyone other than God to create from scratch. The power to interfere with world events. Guy drifted in a sea of thoughts as he delved deeper into the phenomenon, unfolding before his eyes. Guy could disassemble and reconstruct any authority he saw, customizing it to make it easier to use and use for himself. He could also activate multiple different types of authority at the same time, but that was only possible if the skill's usage, restrictions, and resources were loose. The reason why Guy appears to be wielding numerous authorities is because he is activating them one after the other with unparalleled skill, switching between them without any time lag. Even for Guy, it is impossible to activate the highest level of ultimate abilities and skills at the same time. However, what Rimuru is doing is not at that level. Two ultimate abilities, ultimate skills, with different properties were reconstructed into a single authority. No, it was reborn. It is truly the work of God. No, that's not it. Did he evolve the authority that Veldanava had determined to be perfect into something even more powerful? There's no way something so stupid could happen. However, Velzard's change was real. Oh my, Guy could only be amazed at how he seemed to be avoiding reality. While this was going on, a change occurred in Rimuru. At the same time as she returned from her slime state to her human form, the thin membrane that had been enveloping Velzard disappeared. And immediately after that, Rimuru caught Velzard. Velzard, who was being held in Rimuru's arms, opened her eyes slightly. Time ran out, but no answer was found. What on earth did Rimuru do? How is it possible to do something like this? To begin with, at this point, the only option was to question Rimuru himself. Having come to this conclusion, Guy slowly opened his mouth. Emme. Guy asked me to do something unreasonable, but I managed to get through it. Somehow, all of this is thanks to Seal. I slowly let go of Velzard. When she woke up, she was floating in the air, completely calm. Now I could finally relax. Just then, my eyes met with a smiling Guy. Rimuru-kun. I have a really bad feeling about this. Now, what did you do? There's no way I could answer such a question. It was like cheating on a test, but it was Seal who was in charge of the actual work. Trade secrets, you say? I won't tolerate such excuses. I flinch, but if I give in now, I'll lose. As I looked around, searching for salvation, my eyes met with Velzard's. Who the hell are you? It's a very straightforward question, but I don't quite understand the intention. I am who I am. Don't act like you're in love or pretend not to know, no matter how you look at it. This is abnormal. That's right. I kept quiet because he's Veldora-chan's friend, but I thought it was suspicious from the beginning. Come on, isn't it too late now? Guy and Velzard worked in perfect harmony, like a married couple, and began to question me about who I was. Moreover, it was suspicious from the beginning, and it's a bit of a case of playing rock, paper, scissors after the fact, which is troubling. That's disrespectful. Diablo interrupted. Usually it's so over the top that it can get annoying, but for now I'm grateful. Guy argued with Diablo. Velzard joined them. It's one step away from a fight, but I wish they would think a little more about the time and place. At this point, I, as the adult, have no choice but to do something about it. Now, you guys. Now is not the time to be fighting amongst ourselves, right? Let's hurry up and get to Damargania and do something about this evil age thing. Then they return to their daily lives and lead elegant lives. If I can just get this matter over with, the slow life of my dreams will be waiting for me. Let's do our best. I'm the kind of guy who will work as hard as I can to have an easy time slacking off. With such thoughts in mind, I activated the surveillance magic, God's Eye. Argos. I thought I would look into the situation on the ground and use it to help me decide how to help. The battlefield seems to be at a stalemate, but there are many ominous signs in The air. Come on. If we don't hurry up and help, Ruminas and the others will be in trouble, I said, thinking to move away immediately, but Guy and Velzard glared at me. What a carefree guy. On the contrary, it's amazing because it makes me feel like you can rely on me. It may not be praised, but I think the tide has turned in a positive direction. Or rather, am I the only one who's worried about Ruminas and the others? As I panicked after seeing the scene on the screen, Guy called a halt. Don't panic. Let's decide who will act and how when we get there. Velzard also agreed with this. I think you also know. But my brother Veldanava has been revived. I think we will become enemies, but do you have any plans to win? It would have been one thing if it was just Ivalage, but he asked me what I was planning to do about Veldanava. This sudden and unreasonable request makes my mind freeze. I had heard about Veldanava's resurrection. But, no, wait a moment. That's something we should all worry about together, right? This point is really important. I don't want you to push everything onto me. Didn't you hear what I said? I heard about it, but I didn't think it was something I could handle on my own. When I replied, Guy clicked his tongue. No, I'm not the one at fault. Sharing information is important in order to get everyone involved, so we must ask for a proper explanation here. Well, I'll explain. After saying that, Velzard explained. He said, recently, Veldanava, who had been asleep, had woken up. Veldanava is that one, right? Veldora is the eldest son of the dragon species' siblings, and is like the creator of this world, right? And Milim's father. The story goes that they were destroyed by humans a long time ago, and there were no signs of their revival. Feldway and others were desperately trying to revive it. However, it seems that his resurrection was long ago, and he had been in hibernation to regain his strength. What was going on? My head was starting to get confused. Are we sure they're the enemy? Maybe. It seems that Velzard was ordered by Veldanava to leave the large gate leading to Tensukaku open. As a result, the Destruction Death World Dragonryu, Ivalage, appeared in the Axis world. At this point, we must also consider Veldanava an enemy. Velzard spoke gravely. Unlike before, he seemed unapproachable. It seemed like he wanted to destroy this world and then resurrect it. I see. It was a big problem. If you head to the battlefield without any preparation, you're in big trouble. Even Diablo had a serious expression on his face as he pondered. I feel like I'm the only one who lacks a sense of crisis. Well, there's nothing I can do about it. Unlike the other three, I don't know them. To be honest, I only have the image of him as someone who was amazing in the past. One thing that concerns me is, didn't Veldanava lose his powers after Milim was born? I wonder what he's like now. Hearing this question, Velzard shivered. And one more thing. My brother's scary right now. It seems that even Velzard doesn't want to fight him. This isn't about fighting or anything like that. Anyway, it looked very dangerous. Well, I'll take care of it. If that's what Guy says, I'd be happy to hear it. Of course, I'll leave it to you. However, what worries me are Veldanava's followers. Even if there is no doubt that Veldanava is trying to destroy the world, isn't there someone who might follow him? Veldanava's goal was the destruction of the world. That was the basic premise. I intend to resist with all my might, but that doesn't mean everyone will. Guy and the others used to be good friends, right? Is it really okay for Velzard Sand to become enemies with her brother? I want to make this point clear. It would be terrible if I were stabbed in the back later, so it's important to confirm the opinions of both of them first. I think that bastard Veldanava has changed. I haven't seen him recently, but he's behaving in ways that are unthinkable compared to before. My true feelings are that I don't want to be hostile, but I can't keep saying that. Because right now, Oni-sama and Guy can't agree on anything. If that were to happen, it would turn into a fight, and Oni-sama would definitely not go easy on him, so Guy would end up being killed. I don't feel like I'm going to lose. Yufufufu, that's true. Yes, yes. Please do that when we are alone. Well, I guess. I won't know for sure until I actually try, but I'm not the same person I was before. I'll try clashing with Veldanava for real once. I really hope so. Since no one objected, Veldanava decided to leave it to Guy. The problem is that it is unclear who will defect. Someone like Feldway would be happy to follow Veldanava. Q-fu-fu-fu-fu, you're not my opponent, though. Leaving Ruminas aside, what about Dino? Even though he looks like that, he was once Veldanava's confidant. Dino might betray us again. Well, maybe it's not a betrayal this time. Even Milim and Ramiris have deep ties with Veldanava. When it comes to this, it seems like the number of people I can trust is limited. On the other hand, who can you trust? Everyone would be hesitant to go against Veldanava, but even so, is there anyone who might be willing to be our ally? Is Ruminas okay? Well, yeah. He wasn't created directly by Veldanava, and he cherishes this world. I think he'll probably be on our side. The probably part is what makes me curious. Still, it's good to know there is hope. In that sense, Milim said she doesn't even know her father's face. I think it'll probably be okay. When I said that, Guy interrupted me, saying, maybe. Of course, there's no way I can say absolutely here. You said probably just now. I swallowed the words and continued the conversation. The 7 angels of origin, right? Everyone, including Dino, is suspicious. Right. The only ones still alive besides Feldway are Dino, Pico, Gracia, Obra, and Zalario. I want to believe Dino and the other 3, but Obra has apparently pledged her loyalty to Milim, but perhaps she will change her mind when Veldanava appears. As for Zarario, well, the impression is too shallow to really get a good read on him. I can't say for sure about all 5 of them. I agree. Well, I think Dino and the others will probably be fine, but if they become our enemy, we won't show any mercy. How carefree. However, with so much uncertain information, I'm feeling depressed about the battles ahead. I'm sure Velgran-chan and Veldura-chan will be fine. After all, as long as we have someone we love, we can turn the whole world against us. That may be true, indeed. True dragons give off an image of heavy love. It was mainly Velgrind that made the biggest impression on me, but now I think Velzard is pretty much the same. Well, Veldura and I are practically one and the same. If Rudra were still alive, he wouldn't have forgiven Veldanava for what he is now. Guy seemed confident that if he was an idealist, he would definitely stop the world from being destroyed. If that was the case, then Velgrind would also be fine. In the unlikely event that something were to happen, we would simply cancel Velgrind's true dragon liberation. Betrayal would absolutely not happen. This was a calm, yet ruthless remark made by Seal. I tried to cover up the fact that I had forgotten about it by saying that I had such authority. In any case, it seems that the dragon species are fine. It looks like it's going to be a huge sibling fight, but I hope they'll be prepared to take on the challenge. 8-star demon lords, Octogram, will provisionally add Luminous and Leon to their credit line. Dagrel is currently sealed away. What about Ramiris? He is harmless to humans and animals, but it would be the worst if he became your enemy. Milim's, I guess I'll put it on hold. Similarly, I decided to put Dino on hold. Okay, worrying about it anymore won't get us any further. I shrugged and said no. Well, I guess I'll just have to go in for a trial run. Guy also believes that there is no need for further discussion. Don't worry, Rimuru-sama. I will never betray you, and I will eliminate all enemies for you to see. Yeah, you're reliable. Diablo is as usual. It was a bit shocking, but it was true that it was reliable. The policy has not been decided at all, but it seems unlikely that a better idea can come up. Oh, it looks like there's been a change in the local situation. Hearing Velzard's muttering, everyone's gazes focused on the surveillance magic. God's eye Argos. The battlefield had been at a stalemate, but with Milim and the others joining the fight, humanity had gained the upper hand. It's not that I was letting my guard down thinking that, but now doesn't seem like the time to leisurely discuss who should play what role. I was thinking fast and decided to seek advice, but it seemed like there was no time left. I don't want to die, so I'll try my best. At the same time, we would also like to do something about the global crisis. With that in mind, I took everyone and instantly teleported towards the battlefield. Chapter 2, Hope and Disappointment. Ruminez is aware of everything on the battlefield. Therefore, I was left scratching my head in an unbelievable situation. Destruction Deathworld Dragon. Ivalage took the form of Lucia, her cherry blossom gold platinum pink, hair fluttering in the wind. Judging from his overwhelming presence, his chances of winning are hopeless no matter who he faces. Not only that, there are also 3 servants of Ivalage, as each of them has transformed into a human form. Their size has also changed. The largest one is a male Kakashi. On the other hand, the smallest one is Swim. Her gender is unknown, but she looks like a young girl. And Habataki is a female. Her height is well balanced. From these 3, one can sense a power that is beyond common sense. To be honest, it seemed like even Ruminez would be no match for them. In the north, the ravages of the Japanese bush warbler were more troublesome than I had imagined. Flying between dimensions is actually teleportation itself. It is possible to jump over distances, whether close or long, without any preparatory movements. If there were any signs, measures could be taken, but there are none. The Habataki attacks, ignoring the concept of distance. Magic is a concept that can be activated regardless of distance. However, you need to specify the coordinates by visual inspection or some other means. It was possible to directly burn the target, but the difficulty level increased dramatically. Naturally, large-scale magic or extreme magic would not have been allowed to change the coordinates, since this was an opponent that could not be dealt with using normal magic. There was nothing the heroes, who specialized in magic, could do. However, if the Habataki is left unattended, the damage it causes will be enormous. The person who played an active role here was Mai Furuki, who had returned from the other world with Yuuki and the others. Although she was thrown into a tricky situation without any explanation, Mai did her best. She tried to figure out what was required in the current battle situation and act appropriately. It's really annoying not knowing where it's going to appear. That's what Mai thought. Then, to prevent Habataki from teleporting, he made full use of his ultimate ability, ultimate skill, Starry King Terra Mater, to interfere with the phase of the coordinates and disrupt it. This caused Habataki's calculations to fail. Habataki had been jumping, leaping, beaming, stomping, and stomping around the battlefield pleased, but his boastworthy teleportation ability was now sealed. This was possible thanks to a series of lucky coincidences. First of all, it's important to note that teleportation requires delicate technique. It requires precise calculations and will not activate if there are any errors in the input information data. What Mai did was to revise, edit, tamper, and alter that information. To move through space, at the very least two things are required: the coordinates of the current location and the location information of the target point, but my had disrupted the wavelength of the battlefield's space, making it impossible to read accurate information. However, this is not an easy matter. Even if I understood the logic and theory, whether it was possible to put it into practice was another matter. Gadra and Adalman alone couldn't do anything about it, and without Mai there would have been no way to stop Habitaki's teleportation. Here, too, good fortune was at work. Mai had acquired the title Starry Lord, Terra Mater, and was able to fully utilize its powers, which had led to this success. Well, everything was fine up until this point. A bird that can't fly is not just a small fry. Unfortunately, Habitaki possessed powerful enough combat abilities even without relying on teleportation. The Japanese bush warbler was capable of flying at speeds several dozen times faster than the speed of sound. After attacking, it would set its sights on its next prey and take flight, because of the time it takes to switch and the time lag between its initial speed and reaching its maximum speed. It is not actually that fast. However, even so, the Habitaki, with its speed and strength, continued to kill and kill like a blade dancing on the battlefield. Without Rumina's revival, defeat would have been inevitable. Oh dear, even though Mai went to the trouble of sealing his teleportation. Who is this? It's me, Gadra. What? He's not a grandpa anymore. This was Mai's first meeting with the reborn, youthful Gadra. She had met him through Yuuki in the Empire, but his appearance was so different that she couldn't tell him apart. Mai was concerned about many things, but this was no time for leisurely conversation. Since she had suddenly joined the battle, she decided to obediently follow instructions. However, there were very few options available. The 100 members of Diablo's Black Corps, or Black Numbers, are under Gadra's command. Since it's a meritocracy, they don't make fun of Gadra for being a newcomer. Moreover, if he were to fail due to petty vanity or jealousy, punishment from Diablo would await him. He fought with all his might against Habitaki, not fearing death, even though death would mean punishment. Louis was also demonstrating his true abilities, leading a group of just under 400 Blood Knights. Gunter had also put aside his rivalry with Louis and was fighting with all his might alongside them. He was trying to hinder Habitaki's movements, even if it meant staining his body with blood. What they all had in common was that they were not afraid of sacrifice. Each of them gave their all and fought hard for victory. There's no way anyone could ask for anything more. Mai didn't have any brilliant ideas to turn the tide of the battle, but even just blocking one of Habitaki's trump cards was enough to earn her praise. However, that's not the end of it on the battlefield. What do you want to do? Its attacks are lightning-fast slashes. Its wings are made of the ultimate metal, hurricane, and they'll slice through any armor you might have. Adalman, who had left the battlefield, took over Gadra's words. Poor magical defense is useless. I tried a lot of things, but I nearly died. Just as he said, there was a large gash on his shoulder and blood was flowing. Now that he has a living body, he has been injured more often, and Adalman can't help but think that perhaps it would have been better if he had remained a skeleton. Wenti and others were strongly opposed to this opinion, since there was no time to discuss it thoroughly. Adalman had no choice but to do his best in his current form. Therefore, the sacred magic, wide area superior recovery, great high heal, and wide area part regeneration, great regeneration, were constantly active. Even now, the wound is rapidly healing. Although it was painful, Adalman continued without letting her notice. However, I have learned something. Although that bird is a formidable enemy, it is not that intelligent. It seems to have a habit of targeting anyone who moves, so I Think we should be able to deal with it, somehow, if we set a trap. Ahem. Is it a trap? Yes, we will prepare a decoy and have that bird aim at it, just before it makes contact. We will need you to use your powers to teleport it. So you're asking me to be a decoy. You're asking me to be a decoy, right? Hadahoha. Hahoha, it's not that. Mai let out a big sigh. I thought about complaining, but I intuitively realized that the strategy was rational. This strategy wouldn't work if the enemy was intelligent, but it's effective precisely. Because it's simple, interfering with the enemy's teleportation while escaping on. Your own is difficult, but not impossible. Mai thought there was no other way, and agreed to the mission. And the plan worked. Mai's amount of magic essence and energy was considerable, the most in this area. Perhaps she was also attractive as bait, as the Habitaki began to relentlessly target Mai. Thus, with Mai taking on the biggest threat by herself, there was time to wipe out the other magical beasts. Then, the Huryu group, led by Yashichi, Sukuru, and Kakishin, appears. The effects of the recovery magic Adalman had activated were still continuing. The battlefield was stable, and it looked like they could continue on their way to victory, but wow, evolving here is unfair. Just as Mai had complained, Habitaki had transformed into a human form. There was a light of intelligence in his eyes, and it was clear at a glance that he was no simple opponent like before. Mai was able to escape safely because she had the advantage of using her authority. There was no comparison in terms of combat ability, and if she were to fight seriously, she would not be able to last even a minute and would be killed. I feel like this is over. Mai lamented, gazing at Habitaki in despair. In the west, within the midst of the fierce battlefield, there was one area that was relatively safe. It is the base point of the Holy Purification Barrier, Holy Field. There are 8 locations in total. There were 4 locations on the ground and in the sky. Sale, who is in charge of one part of the area, smiles wryly, realizing that this is as far as he has come. Oh dear, it seems the monster has grown even stronger. The 4-legged beast, resembling a vicious wolf, had taken on a human form. Though its size had shrunk, its presence had grown. Clearly, it should have been seen as an increase in combat capabilities. Fortunately, the cliff did not move. The reason for this is simple. He was used to fighting as a beast and was confused by his own transformation. Well, what should we do? Do you feel like running away? This joking remark echoed in Sale's mind. Fritz, who was clinging to the top window of the tower and in charge of the upper barrier, was able to converse with him through the barrier. Ha, don't be ridiculous. You can be scared if you want, but please stop lumping me in with you. Sale retorted. It's not that I don't want to run away. I just know that there's no point in running away. This wasn't just true for Sale, but for all the heroes present here. Yes, even if she was the woman who had once abandoned Sale and run away. You don't have to run, Glenda. With a touch of resentment, Sale asked his former colleague. Glenda looked to be covered in wounds, but her eyes were shining brightly. Her fighting spirit had not yet been discouraged, and she had only come here for some basic treatment. Sale was surprised to see Glenda like that. Glenda is a selfish woman who would abandon her friends so easily. At least, that's the perception that Sale and Gregory have. However, something seemed different. Glenda looked as if she was going to run out without waiting for the healing to finish. It was an unfamiliar sight, hard to imagine from the Glenda of the past. That's why Sale raised the question. Glenda's answer was so unexpected and elegant. Run away. There's no point in even thinking about it. What we need now is to figure out how to make the most of our limited lives. Sale was surprised to hear this. Gregory was also surprised. Hey, is that what you said? Gregory spoke in shock. Sale jumped on the bandwagon. Don't mess with me, Glenda. When we faced that demon, Diablo, you abandoned me and ran away. I won't let you say you've forgotten that. But Glenda is a dignified woman. The situation was different. Back then, I was just a puppet of Rosso, and I didn't have any ideals or causes. Oh, come on. So does that mean it's there now? That's right, but I can't believe you when you say that. Glenda snorted at the sight of her two former colleagues, who were not only skeptical but completely distrustful, as she gave her subordinates a sharp pep talk. She flashed a grin at Sale and Gregory. Such small men. That's why you were so scared of Hinata-sama that you couldn't return to Ribirio's, right? Oh well, you probably won't believe me no matter what I say, so I'll prove it with my attitude from now on. With those words, Glenda returned to the fierce battlefield once again. As they watched, Sale and Gregory looked at each other with complicated expressions. What do you think? Well, I can't believe it. She's changed, hasn't she? Yeah, if I don't admit it at least a little, I'll end up feeling like I'm uncool. Right. The two of them reluctantly nodded to each other. And then, you will be able to overcome your doubts. I will use all my strength to maintain the barrier for even a second longer, even if it means my body being shattered. Oh, I'll protect you for just a second longer. That way, I can buy myself 2 seconds. The reason Gregory hadn't moved was because he had volunteered to protect Sale. While Glenda was covered in wounds, Gregory himself was unharmed. This fact alone made the situation even more awkward. That is why you must give your all to the role entrusted to you. Well done. If only we could buy humanity 2 seconds of their remaining time. HMPH, that's right. They said this to each other and regained their enthusiasm. Meanwhile, the dreaded moment arrived. Preparations for the cliffhanger were complete. Keikashi put his right fist on the ground and assumed a stance similar to that of a sumo wrestler. He ran off without putting his left fist on the ground. The acceleration was incredible. In an instant, it exceeded the speed of sound and approached Sale. So you're targeting me after all. I had a feeling that this would happen. Many of the other cryptids in the West were of low intelligence, but the higher ranking species possessed a certain level of wisdom. An evil intent could be sensed from the Keikashi who controlled them. He has seen through my weakness. He understands that if he can destroy me, he can destroy this holy purification barrier, holy field. Sale prepared himself for death. Even if that happened, he would be able to maintain the holy purification barrier, holy field, and continue to exert his energy, so he continued to refine his sacred power. This was no time to run away, and just because he was dead didn't mean he could run away from his responsibilities. He might be able to return to life after death. But if the holy purification barrier had collapsed by then humanity's defeat would be final. Sale's responsibility was grave. Gregory also bears an equally heavy responsibility. Ewa! He shouted and leapt in front of Keikashi with his halberd at the ready. It was an act that was done with the full knowledge that it could mean death. The all things unmoving that resided in Gregory's trained body had now evolved into the unique skill steel body. The extra skill, all things unmoving, was already a simple authority that strengthened the body and increased defensive power, but now it reflected Gregory's will and strengthened his body even more. Furthermore, he had united with the Earth Knight and War Gnome, strengthening Gregory's body to an unparalleled extent. However, even so, it was an authority that only worked on the human level. I know, even my well-trained, steel body and hard person won't work against that hateful dog and Ranga. But hey, I'll show you I can buy myself at least a second. Even if they died, there was a chance that they could be revived by the goddess Rumina's. In fact, a messenger had reported that a resurrection had taken place. On the first move, on the eastern battlefield. This had the effect of boosting morale and removing anxiety from the warriors. But Gregory's judgment was different. Anyone who used sacred magic that borrowed the power of God would understand that there was no way such nonsensical miracles could be performed one after another. There is a limit to the number of times this miracle can occur. It may become possible to exercise it again over time, but that is truly a God only knows situation. Gregory did not rely on such miracles, but simply did what he could carefully. And then, I hope someone survives and passes on the story of my heroic deeds. That was all I could hope for. If anyone survives, it will be a victory for humanity. It was something that he could boast about in the afterlife, that his life had meaning. This is exactly what Ruminas is encouraging. It is a blessing to be able to find value in your own life. As Gregory faces death, his field of vision widens and he has the illusion of looking down on the battlefield to the west. At the edge of his consciousness, his former colleague Glenda was scolding his teammates. Although Glenda has lost her left arm, there is no sign of despair on her face, and she fires the pistol in her right hand, killing one of the strange monsters. You guys, use your heads a bit. It takes 60 seconds to recover. Resurrect once. Every 5 minutes. If you're going to die, then wait until the timing is right. Don't waste God's miracle. Glenda has not given up on victory. If the injuries were minor, they would heal them themselves. But if the injuries were too severe, they would rely on Rumina's miracles. Then they would wait for the right timing to launch a suicide attack, which would likely result in death. Unlike Gregory, Glenda seemed to have already died several times in the battle. You're kidding me. That selfish Glenda is acting like an example to her underlings. Moreover, it seems that he truly believes that the miracle of resurrection can happen again and again. It's incredibly crazy. And yet, he was very reliable. Upon learning this new side of Glenda, Gregory felt ashamed. On top of that, he made a major change in his attitude, deciding that instead of thinking that he would die anyway, he would continue to protect even if it meant dying. The next moment, Kakashi's arms approached Gregory. Ferocious claws that looked like they could pulverize a person were swung down from above Gregory's head. With his awareness still being stretched out, Gregory waited with his steel body fully activated. It's too fast to keep up, so the only thing they can do is put their body on the line to block it. It was synonymous with death, but Gregory had no regrets. On the contrary, he felt like he could stand in his way again and again. However, there is a problem. Right now. Woo-woo. The voice came late. The cliff that was right in front of me was blown away by a sudden gust of black wind. It was a success. Good job, Gabuta. Just as you had guessed, it seems he's not used to moving in human form either. It was the due of Gabuta and Ranga. After arriving on the battlefield as reinforcements, they waited for the decisive moment. If Kakashi had remained a beast, he would have had to use a different strategy. However, now that he had taken on a human form, Gabuta had a certain possibility in mind. It was a bitter memory of their past failures. No matter how much a body is strengthened, it is difficult to handle when it is unfamiliar to the user. No, the stronger it is, the more difficult it is to handle. It was because they remembered that experience that Gabuta and Ranga waited for that moment. I hid in the shadows and kept observing the cliffs. Then, when he saw the cliff move, he took action. Gregory was used as a decoy, but as long as the results are good, all's well that ends well. Even I had to go along with it, Kumara said, with a dissatisfied look on his face. Since the results were as Gabuta and his men had hoped, they decided to postpone their complaints. They casually cut down the Demon Lord Seed class, cryptid, idol, and beast tribe with their tails. It seems like there is a lot of frustration building up, and the ones who took it out were the cryptids. Don't go. Kumara then transformed her tail into the 8 guardians and gave orders. The counterattack began. While Gabuta and Ranga were holding back Kakashi, the battle intensified as they tried to drive out the other packs. By the way, as an aside, I think I've seen that person before. He's the one Rangasan used to play with. HMMMM. He was a tough guy. It is said that such a conversation may or may not have taken place. As for Gregory, who was saved, his situation is also complicated. You've ruined my resolve. This is why I hate dogs so much. Gregory, who would later be known as the immovable bastion of dog hatred, tried to dodge the question with an embarrassed look on his face. In the south direction. In this place, Ultima had the stage all to herself. Unlike Kakashi, Swim has been rampaging on the battlefield since the very beginning. Ultima's efforts prevented this and prevented the damage from occurring. Swims originally swim between the stars of a different world that is vaster than the numerous thousands of universes. Their maximum battle speed reaches sublight speed, and they are a natural disaster that has destroyed countless interstellar nations by leaping through space through gates to another world that they generate as easily as breathing. A gate to another world is a type of teleportation gate, a spatial transfer, intended for ultra-long distance travel on a cosmic scale. By setting these up in various places, Swim can easily travel back and forth between places he has visited once. Although Swim is like that, in terms of existence alone, he is comparable to a dragon species. Its massive size reaches 2,000 meters, even under normal circumstances, and Swim can grow even larger if he so desires. Its speed and destructive power alone make it unparalleled in its ferocity, and it is an existence that transcends the concept of individual combat. Although its body size can be freely changed, it is easy to see with a little thought that it is not suited to activity on land. This fact remains true, even if it is a vast, fundamental world. Still, if Mama calls me, I have no choice. Excited by this first experience, Swim manifested on Earth. Swim thought he had grown to a size suitable for movement on the ground, but it seems he was still too huge. After adjusting his size a bit, he was able to move around comfortably. The distance to the enemy is so short that it would normally be impossible to reach top speed. However, Swim is different. It reaches sublight speed from the start and is able to trample, run over, overrun any enemy it comes into contact with. It's the same this time. Like countless interstellar nations, this planet was bound to transform into a land of death. However, something happened to interrupt this swim. Swim swims across the battlefield at sublight speed. Ultima had predicted this and evacuated those who would have otherwise fallen. Pray. Hey guys, are you taking this seriously? If this thing goes outside the holy purification barrier, holy field, it's all over, you know. Ultima gave such a pep talk as she stood in front of Swim and guided him. He read the direction Swim was heading and set up a teleportation gate along the way. By doing so, he was able to manipulate Swim's path and successfully stop him in this spot. That's not all. I requested Velgrain's cooperation and had her set up an 8-gate fortress. Velgrain had been trying to recover her stamina by integrating all of her separate body-soul-body strength, but she pushed herself and complied with Ultima's request. Even though she was in the east, she opened a gate to the place Ultima desired. Are you sure? You must understand that this puts the defending team at a disadvantage, you know. Of course, I understand, but I think it's easier to fight alone than to protect someone who's a hindrance to you. Ultima answered the worried Velgrind without any hesitation. In fact, the swim was in a class of its own. If you think about whether or not it can be defeated, the answer is that even Ultima would find it difficult. However, it is possible to buy time. Rimuru's wish was to have as few casualties as possible, and if he wanted to maintain that, the best strategy would be to bring it to one-on-one combat. At least, that was Ultima's decision. Velgrind also understood Ultima's intentions. She also fully understood its usefulness and complied with her request. And now, Ultima had lured Swim into the 8-gate fortification and was putting up a desperate resistance. Though it is said to have 8 gates, there is actually only one. There is just a vast space that is perfect for one-on-one combat. The swimming was moving freely in all directions within this space. Their target is Ultima, but they have not achieved their goal. From Ultima's perspective, it was just a simple game of tag. I thought so. This guy isn't very clever and relies on brute force, so his intentions are easy to read. Ultima said in a good mood. Swim was extremely ferocious, but that was against an opponent who didn't even try to run away. Swim's attack methods are diverse. The most common methods are direct attacks using body slams or tentacles, but these are useless against opponents that cannot be caught. So Swim changed his tack. Spirit Light Child Water Fish Lightning possess the destructive power to pulverize even a planet with a single shot and are generated from Swim's infinitely regenerating tentacles. They automatically track towards their target at sublight speed and are a sure kill blow, but Ultima has neutralized them. All by using a duplicate dummy, created with magical energy as a decoy. Replicas and dummies have no combat power or anything, they are simply bodies made from solidified magical energy, so they can be created in almost endless quantities. They are meaningless to those with wisdom, but they were extremely effective against Swim. It was here that Swim first recognized Ultima. However, not as an enemy. Instead of just killing time like usual, I wanted to destroy it of my own volition. It was exactly like the thoughts of a child being given a toy for the first time. Swim, who didn't know how to control himself, used his trump card here. If Spirit Light Child Wisdom Fish Lightning doesn't work, then the only option left is the favorite, Quantum Splash. It's Swim's pride and joy, a domain-destroying weapon. Swim has used the Quantum Splash, a quantum distortion cannon, to reduce many star systems to nothing. If life had been born there, they would have had other games to play, but if not, they would have only been a nuisance. In Swim's experience, nothing has been able to withstand the power of this attack. This will be the first time it has been used on land, but it is also a Swim that we are looking forward to seeing the results of. And at an unfortunate time. At this time, a present from Evil Age was delivered to Swim. As soon as Swim finished firing the diffusion distortion quantum cannon, Quantum Splash, he transformed into a human. A powerful blast ravaged the south. The 8-gate fortress that Velgrind had constructed could not withstand the pressure from within and collapsed.